Okay, y'all. So, you know how we do nicknames for our stars in the books. And we have decided to call Phil Spector Gecko Spector because he looks like a lizard. Well, hello there, love bugs. Hello there, Bellas. If you have not already done so, please remember to like, share to Facebook, subscribe, and visit uptopbeauty.com. Today's looky would be our Ronnie Bear headband. Oh, look at this. So queenly, baby. Ooh, I love it. So we have them in the black and green. And we have the gray coming in soon. So go on over there to uptopbeauty.com and check it out. And if you are not already a part of this book club, please hit the Patreon link below and or the join button here on the YouTube. And for a small monthly fee of $5, you babies, yes, you can be privy to all the shenanigans before the YouTube gets it, if the YouTube gets it. Now, let's continue talking about Ronnie Spector's Be My Baby. But I had no idea what real craziness was until Darlene Love finally told me Phil's best kept secret. It happened in spring of 1964 on what must have been the worst day of my entire life. I was doing background vocals at Gold Star that afternoon with Darlene and some of the other singers when Phil's mom dropped by for a visit, Bertha Spector. So now we know who's responsible for that damn maniac. You mamas, y'all know when y'all children be off. That little mother hunchy is in the back room burning up cats. You know something ain't right. Don't ignore that, y'all. Pay attention to the signs, y'all. She knows that Gecko Spector ain't right. She knows this. But she chooses to ignore. Okay? That's why these ninjas be fucked up baby fathers. Bertha Spector was a tiny woman, a real Jewish mother type, and very protective of her son. She used to walk right into the studio no matter what was going on. Some days, she even brought a bowl of chicken soup for Phil, which he hated. He finally came up with a plan to outsmart her. We were on a break from recording when the studio watchman buzzed Phil from the front door to warn him that his mom was on her way back with a tray of soup. Phil immediately had Sonny Bono lock the studio door and turn the red light on so she couldn't come in. Then we waited. About 10 minutes later, Phil had Sonny check the door to see if Mrs. Spector was still waiting in the hallway with his soup. She was. Okay, let her in, Phil said. I'm a effing millionaire, and my mother still brings me homemade soup. Darlene and I watched the whole thing from a corner of the studio, and we were cracking up. I asked Darlene if she didn't think Phil looked cute when his mom handed him his soup spoon. Cute? She said. You really think Phil is cute? Yeah, I answered. Don't you? Not the way you do, girl. She said, you really are hung up on this guy, aren't you? Hung up, I repeated. Then I was quiet for a long time until I finally decided to confess my deepest fantasy. I'm not hung up, Darlene. I'm in love. And one day I'm going to marry that man. Darlene just shook her head and said, I don't think so. Why not? I demanded. Well, she sighed, you're going to have to find out sometime. She looked around for a more private spot, which didn't exist at Gold Star. Then she pointed to the ladies' room door. Come on, she said, in there. I'll never forget the next 5 minutes. I walked into the ladies' room and took my usual place at the sink, right in front of the big mirror. Then Darlene blurted it out. Honey, this guy's married. That is a horrible feeling to find out that the person that you are smitten with, and in her case, in love with, is married. You feel betrayed. Oh my goodness, I was messing with this dude around Morton Street, y'all. Ooh, I was so smitten by him. This guy was like a great guy to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, he was everything to me. He was just real cool. But he was real hush-hush about us. All I knew is when I asked him to do something, he would do it. You know, like I said, I lived on one side of Morton and all the action was on the other. So I would walk over to the other side and be like, hey, what you doing? You want to come down the street and watch a movie with me and my sister? Because, you know, I couldn't breathe without taking her. But, you know, he'd be like, sure, I'm going to order pizza. Go ahead, order the pizza. Here go the money, blah, blah, blah. This is when Domino's first came out, girl. Oh, my God. And I was so smitten by this guy. This was a great guy. Come to find out, he was a Libra. I didn't find that out until after somebody shot him to death. Even if it was my boyfriend, I was never really the type to talk. I never really was the type to run out there and be like, oh, I got a boyfriend, blah, blah, blah. I never really was that person. I always kept things quiet because I didn't want people to know my business. One day I was at school, y'all, and man, I'm telling you, I had to fight my friend over this dude. My friend had another friend, and the dude was her boyfriend. So I ended up fighting my friend. The girl has apologized to me since then. It's like, Nay, that was messed up for me to do. You know, I was young and dumb. I was like, yeah, I was young and dumb too. But I got him back, and I'm not proud of how I got him back because I ended up, you know, messing around with one of his friends, which was very immature, but I was very hurt. That was one of them things that, like, boom, like hit me in my chest, and I will always remember that. I will always remember that pain that I felt because he was like my first teenage love, you know? I mean, I've had boyfriends before him, but he was my first guy who I really liked. Told y'all, them Libra men be weasels. Darlene tried her best to comfort me, but what could she do? Who is it? I asked her. Give me a name. Give me a face. Ronnie, what you gonna do? You gonna go beat her up? Answer no. You know you can't fight, girl. I couldn't understand how this wife could have avoided me all this time. I've never met her. Not many people have, Darlene told me. Her name is Annette, but Phil never talks about her. I don't think he even sees her anymore. She just lives up there in the penthouse he's got in New York. The shoes. Suddenly, all I could think of was the collection of shoes that I'd seen in Phil's house. The ones that supposedly belonged to his sister. Those were her shoes. His wife. So didn't I tell you about when them ninjas get aggressive with you? It's because they be dead wrong and they be getting caught in their bullshit. So what they do is they try to bully you into backing down so that you won't ever ask questions again. Girl, I see. You Gecko Spector, I see your bitch. Phil had kept it so well hidden, but I knew that everyone who worked for him must have known about her. Nino Tempo and Sonny and Larry Levine, our engineer, but none of them had ever bothered to tell me. Suddenly, I felt betrayed and completely alone. I've got to get out of here, I told Darlene. What should I tell Phil? Tell him I got sick, I said. That I had my period. Tell him anything you want, but I've got to go now. Okay, sweetie, she said. But I want you to call me if you need anything. Anything at all, okay? Okay, bitch. You just ruined my whole entire fantasies, okay? The man that I thought I was going to marry and have children with, I'm finding out that he married to some bitch that got 1,000 pair of shoes. Bitch. I felt terrible for a few days, like somebody had died. But my strategy for getting past the grief was to pretend nothing had happened. I was angry and hurt. But in those days, I didn't know how to show those emotions. I didn't know how to say, don't fuck with me. Besides, Phil couldn't deal with being confronted any better than I could deal with confronting. In that way, we really were a perfect match for each other. I get it. I also had a career to think about. It's not like Phil was just an unfaithful lover. Now, at this point right here, she's very young. I'm not going to bash her, but she's choosing to deal with this married man because this man has way more to offer her than just his pickles and a few dollars. He has her career in his hands. Now, remember I said earlier, Ronnie is an opportunist. She sees her goal and she goes straight forward. Of all the records I did with Phil, Walking in the Rain is still my favorite. When it came time for me to record, Phil said, "Go on into the studio. I've got a surprise for you." I stepped in and stood at my usual spot behind the music stand. "Okay, Ronnie, just listen to this." I put the headphones on as Phil reached over to flip the tape on. Everything was quiet. Then all of a sudden, I heard a low rumble, like there was thunder coming in from every corner of the room. It was the intro to the song, but Larry and Phil had mixed the sounds of a real thunderstorm in with this beautiful melody. "I'm tired of paying for hotel rooms," Phil announced one afternoon as we got into his roles after a recording session at Gold Star. "Maybe we should get a house." I thought he must be joking. "I love that. I thought he must be joking. I love that. When can we start looking?" "Why not today?" he asked with a little smile. Then he leaned forward and told George Brand, the chauffeur, "Let's go see if we can find a house, George." He obviously had the whole thing set up beforehand because George knew exactly where he was going. He steered the big limousine through Hollywood and into Beverly Hills by way of the Sunset Strip. Then George drove up a hill and parked the car in front of the big house with a fountain out front. By this time, I knew Phil had the whole thing set up, so I wasn't surprised when the lady who was showing the house came out to the driveway and offered to take us inside. It's hard to describe exactly what it's like when a little girl from Spanish Harlem sees her first mansion, but it's not a bad feeling. The place was a palace. "What do you think?" Phil asked me as we walked back to the car. "Could you be happy in a place like this?" "Yes," I told him. "As a matter of fact, I think I could." Now that is a beautiful romantic gesture. Okay, and me being a Libra, you know we believe in love. You know we like acts of romanticism. He would have got me. He probably would have got me in that moment because I'm not about to marry no gecko and have no kids with no gecko because I don't want to produce little gecko specters. You know I give the Texan. I be on his ass when it comes down to him and his bullshit. But one thing I will never take away from him is his romanticism. Okay? Never. That man from the very beginning to the fucked up end. And actually the end wasn't messed up because he wanted me to stay with him. It was just I was over it by then. I was moving on to something different. He was the most romantic because he had so much other darkness to him. He kind of sort of had to be that way. You know what I'm saying? But I also believe that that was him. So when he wasn't doing dirty dick things, he was the ultimate. By 1965, the Ronettes were already on the way out. We only had 2 songs break into the top 100 that year. Born to Be Together and Is This What I Get for Loving You. The biggest reason for our slump was Phil, who had already started to lose interest in us as far back as April of 1964. That's when he recorded us doing Chapel of Love and then refused to release it as a single. We thought it was such a great record that we practically begged him to put it out. "No," he told us, "it doesn't sound like a hit. Forget about that one." Then the Dixie Cups version came out and it was a smash. It was so depressing, but that was Phil's way. He was always recording songs that he refused to release. Between the middle of 1965 and the end of 1966, we recorded a whole string of unreleased songs. Even after the Ronettes slump began in 1965, I didn't get too concerned. Phil had just scored the biggest smash of his career with You've Lost That Loving Feeling by the Righteous Brothers, and he was still as hot as ever. So I figured it was just a matter of time before he turned his attention to my career. It wasn't like he could ignore me. I'd practically been living with him since he moved into the mansion in 1965. The Ronettes had personal appearances booked solid through the year, and I was having so much fun on stage with the Ronettes. I didn't have time to worry about our failing record career. Okay, I get it. I mean, I'm still in the public, the people still clapping, so I ain't worried. So one time they was in the studio, right? And she in the studio singing background with this lady, okay? Ronnie Spector called her a big fat lady. That, I don't know. Ronnie Spector, between your blatant colorism and I'm better because I'm lighter or mixed breed or something like that, it kind of rubs me the wrong way. Then for you to just say this big fat lady, I'm like, yo, come on. You know, and Ronnie Spector is not a big woman. She was bigger as she got older, but she was pretty thin. She's in the studio with this woman, and the lady cracked a joke. Gecko Spector got jealous. Ronnie, can you come here, please? Right now, please?
Okay, girl, I'll be right back. Let me go see what Gecko wants.
So Phil has said to her, I want you to sit right here with me. Stay right here the whole time. Just sit here with me while I work. Watch me work. Initially, that was very sweet and romantic to her, until she realized that he did not want her to fraternize at all with the people that worked in the studio or were working with him in the studio. So now she's relegated to the chair next to him. She never went back into that studio unless she was working. There will be no fraternizing with the other motherfucker. Nobody will make you laugh except for me. A lot of people have asked me how Phil created his wall of sound, but to understand Phil's sound, you must have to understand Phil. The wall of sound was really just a reflection of his own personality, which was very extravagant. When Phil made a record, he might start out with the same basic tracks as everyone else. Drums, guitar, bass, and vocals. But then he'd always add in more sounds because he wanted his records to be as extravagant as he was. He didn't have any use for a record unless it was at least 10 times bigger than life. Phil was one guy who believed that more is more. As much as I loved hanging around the booth with Phil, it wasn't long before I started to miss being out in the studio with the crowd. But the first time I tried to leave the booth and join in on the fun in the studio, Phil made it clear that my place was with him and only him. Where are you going, Ronnie? Phil asked when I got up from my stool. I'm just going out to sing a few of the backgrounds with the guys. No. I don't want you doing that anymore. But Phil, I argued, everybody sings back up. Not you, Ronnie. He said, your voice is too distinctive. It comes right through. Well, I suggested, maybe I could just go, ooh, real low. But Phil wouldn't budge. By 1966, Phil's perfectionism was ruining every artist on his label. Every time he made a record, he'd find some flaw that nobody else in the whole world could hear, and he'd refuse to put it out. What's his name? The Dr. Dre? Y'all ain't getting that Chronic album. That nigga will die. When Dr. Dre is in the hospice, he'll create that Chronic 2 album. Because if it flops, ain't nobody going to be here to hear it but you. And if he released a song that didn't make it to the top of the charts, he'd get depressed for months, sometimes longer. Finally, he made one record that flopped so bad, it actually sent him into retirement. River Deep Mountain High.